Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of the Thriving Adoptees podcast. So today I'm delighted to be joined by Kirsten. Kirsten, welcome to the show, Kirsten. This is going to be a fantastic hour or so that we spend together, I'm sure.
Thank you so much. I'm excited to be joining you today.
So normally, listeners, I have a conversation with a guest for an hour or so, and then we have another conversation that we record. And what Kirsten said to me at the start of our pre-prod call, if you like, pre-production call, it's just like we're so aligned. I thought, well, let's just go straight into this, which you're straight into it. And so Kirsten's a fellow adoptee, and what she said to me was that she never wanted to stay stuck in the trauma. She wanted to grow and heal, and she wanted to share what she's been through, in case that gave voice or helped somebody else. And I just said, well, that's exactly what we want to do on that show. So we've got a meeting of hearts, right?
Absolutely.
Meeting of minds is one thing.
Yes.
Hearts
is a whole nother. That's a whole different level.
So what you said was you didn't want the identity to be the trauma, or what you said. I've written down the identity is the trauma. Can you make that make sense? Because I don't think I made it sense when I repeated it back.
Sure. I've been kind of functioning and interacting with folks in the adoptee world, so to speak, for the last several years. And I've encountered several people who seem stuck, and they're so wrapped up in the trauma itself that trauma is the only identity that they have. And so maybe moving through and doing the work to heal, it's risky, it's vulnerable, and it's frightening. And I think there's some concern that without the trauma, what is their identity?
Yeah. Wow, this is so powerful. You talked about trauma is the only identity they have. And I think what I'm trying to do with Thriving Adoptees is uncouple us from our trauma.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Uncouple us from uncouple adoptees from their trauma. Allow us to see a gap between who we are and the trauma we've been through.
Trauma has certainly shaped who we are, but I don't think we have to be bound by it. I didn't even know it was trauma initially. The whole coming out of the fog thing. That was when I went, whoa, and that was a process. But I think being bound by that trauma, again, wrapped up as that being the only piece of your identity, I think that's where people get stuck.
Okay. Can I make a distinction here and see if this makes sense? Because
sure.
So I think you use two words here. You use identity and personality. Okay.
Yeah.
So my view is that trauma is an add-on that shapes. It may shape our personality, but it doesn't shape our identity.
I would agree with that. I would agree with that.
So what I mean is that we may come across to the world and act insecurely, for example. I know I do, right?
Oh,
so
absolutely.
That might be my personality when I am when I am stuck in moments of insecurity. That I may present that way, but
Mhm.
I am not, my identity and my personality are not the same thing. The identity.
That makes sense to me. I get what you're saying.
So let me go in a different, you get it, and that's brilliant. I'm just thinking how I'll make sure that it lands for the listeners, right? So we're back to my my favorite metaphor, listeners. Oh, I've got a new one, actually. I've got a new one.
Okay.
I'm tired. I'm not tired. But I have been going on a lot about have you heard me do the clenched fist with the diamond in it? Have you heard me do that?
I have not heard that.
Okay. So I'm holding my fist up to the screen, and it's a clenched fist. Okay. And the clench, the fist is a metaphor for the trauma. And the reason I chose the fist is because it represents, fist represents anger. And when I came out of the fog, my trauma presented as anger. Okay, so that's my fist. So the fist is clenched white knuckles, right? That's not the natural shape of the hand. The natural shape of the hand is open, and when I open and unfurl my fist to reveal the diamond that I am. So my personality is the fist. The fist is a metaphor for my personality, for the trauma. For the trauma and for the anger, all the same metaphor. But who I truly am is the diamond.
All those things are covering the gem within.
Yes, totally. So it's a matter of seeing. It's a matter of seeing who we are. The metaphor helps us uncouple. So I'm separating me, the diamond, and you, the diamond, as well, and every other human being on this planet, every adoptee as well, from the trauma, which is the fist. That's the essential. This is real life. This is real life. It's normally me that gets interrupted on the podcast, right? So that's one thing. So so listeners will probably, some of them might be getting cheesed off about hearing the diamond metaphor. So I came up with another one over the weekend, right? So imagine a bruised peach.
Okay.
Bruised peach. Okay. So the flesh of the peach represents our feelings and our trauma, and the stone in the middle of the peach represents who we are. Now, the reason I like the peach metaphor is because everybody goes on about the primal wound. Okay, if I take a knife to the peach, I can cut through the flesh. So the flesh can be cut. The flesh can be cut, therefore the flesh can be wounded, but the stone in the middle of the peach can't be damaged by the knife. So the primal wound hurts our feelings for sure. I have primarily wounded. I have felt primarily wounded, but I have not been primarily wounded because I am the stone of the peach, not the flesh of the peach.
I like that as well. Those are great metaphors. Both.
Thank you. Thank you. But this show is supposed to be me interviewing you, and I've gone down often, which I often do, is I see an opportunity and I just go for it. So you talked about being stuck, and So why do you think people get stuck in the trauma and have difficulty uncoupling who they are from how they feel?
Fear. I think fear is a big part of it. Doing the work and getting through the understanding of the trauma and how that has impacted who a person might be or how they present, as you said, in personality. It's deliberate, intentional, difficult work. And I think there, for some folks, are fear of the unknown and what might lie on the other side. All the stories that people have told themselves of inadequacies and those type of things, that reaching beyond that is vulnerable. It's risky. It's frightening. And I think just the genuine fear of what might happen is limiting for some folks.
Yeah.
I think I saw it more as a possibility of something different. I'm not discounting anybody else's journey by any means. But I think for me, it became more of an opportunity for growth and change and hope and newness. And I didn't want to stay. I believe very strongly that part of our reason for being here is continued growth and change, and we're always learning new things.
So what did you learn as you, did you feel you had an option, or did you feel like you had to run into it? Because
I don't think I ever felt there was an option.
okay.
As I came out of the fog, no, I had to proceed.
Yeah.
For me, that experience began, it was somewhat of an epiphany. I was on a pilgrimage, and during that trip, it became clear to me that adoption was a big part of my life that I'd never looked at very deeply. And when I came home from that trip, it became very, very clear to me that I needed to start running out of the fog instead of staying in it. Now that I knew that I was in it, I wanted to find my way out.
So how has you mentioned the word epiphany and pilgrimage. So how has your religious beliefs, how have your religious beliefs helped you along the journey?
I would not have made it without my faith. I would not have been where I was without my faith, in terms of where the pilgrimage. I was in Iona, Scotland. Iona is often described as a thin place between heaven and earth. And I would not have been there were it not for my faith. And I believe that for me, the strength to proceed through that came very much from my faith.
Yeah. So was it, there's a sense on one hand that there's balancing faith and fear. Sure. On one hand, and on the other hand, it's like it was a no-brainer. It was a no. It wasn't a balance at all. It wasn't a am I brave enough to step forward? Do I know? It wasn't like that. It was more. It sounds like it was more of a no-brainer.
I'm speaking from hindsight.
Yeah.
So that's a different lens for certain. During the process itself, I don't think I knew those questions as far as, am I brave enough to do this? I don't think I ever thought for a moment that I was being brave in what I was doing. I felt like I was on this journey, this path to something different. And sometimes I'd take a pause. I'd have to take a break. Again, in hindsight, I didn't realize at the time that those pauses were what they were. But as one thing would lead to another, I just kept putting one foot in front of the other and made my way through. It was really about a 7-year process of really working my way through the difficulties of understanding adoption and understanding what that meant to be a child of adoption, but not allowing it to limit who I had the potential to be. That diamond, I wanted to find that diamond. I wanted to understand who that diamond was.
Did you know it was there?
It was a longing for self, true self, which again comes back to faith. I believe strongly that we all carry that true self, whether adopted, not adopted. And I think part of our journey in life is to continue to peel the layers back and find that self. For me, that self discovery came through coming out of the fog of adoption.
Yeah. Interesting, because I never knew it was there. So it sounds like you've heard this. Have you heard this idea that we're motivated away from fear and towards joy, happiness, pleasure? We're motivated to a larger or lesser extent by both things, right? So away
Yes.
from or towards. I was motivated away from pain, and so I had no option. I'm not a religious guy, but a religious thing's just metaphors just popped into my head. So the devil had a red hot poker behind me. Right?
Absolutely.
I was running that way, right? But I didn't have faith, so I didn't know what I was going to find.
Well, and I think some of that that longing for identity of true self came from some of my personal faith journey as well. Yeah. That had already been on my radar as something.
Yeah.
And so it was when the adoption portion became part of that, it was like, again, an epiphany, a light bulb moment where I went, oh, that's some of what's covering up, that diamond on the inside.
Yeah. Okay.
The longing for true self and discovery of who that person, who I'm truly called to be.
Yeah. Yeah. So if I play with the metaphor, the fog metaphor in my head all the time. So what do you think that the fog shrouds? I mean, we come out of the fog. What comes next, and what comes after that? What do we see? Can you extend the metaphor for me or with me?
Sure, I can attempt to.
Yeah.
I don't know how succinctly I could do it. I think the metaphor of the fog has value because I knew my entire life that I was adopted. That was not something new that came to me. I know there are late discovery adoptees, and that's a a whole nother stack of things to uncover. But for me, I had known my whole life. And the fog part of it was that I didn't realize the impact it had had. So I had wandered through my life, happily, so to speak, as Kirsten. And then when I discovered that adoption had certainly shaped who that person of Kirsten was, I think I'm seeing myself and my life with a clarity. As that fog has lifted, there is new clarity as to why I do the things I do and why I behaved some of the ways that I have throughout my life, choices I've made, all of those things. Kind of like the journey, I said, I'm looking now in hindsight. So it's brought me some clarity in who and how and why I tick the way I do. Ticking like a clock, not, physical ticks, but
or like a bomb, right?
Right. Yeah, well, yeah, occasionally. Just understanding, and like now being able to identify why something may set me in a tailspin. I can now identify and say, whoa, okay, I know what's going on, and I know that I can get to the other side of it. Having the tools and the resources to understand those things has been quite helpful. And again, I feel like I just see the world differently, clearly.
Okay. That kind of leads me on to where I'm going with the fog and the metaphor on what comes after it, right? So I was listening to something about the fog, and like everybody, somebody who was an adoptee talking about, like there's a shared definition of it, right? And it's not. I mean, I think it's like every experience, every human experience is different. Every adoptee experience is different. Every adopter experience is different. Every fog experience is also different.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
Yeah. And so if the experience is different, then, definitions, like looking in the dictionary for a definition, is like there's going to be however many billion of them different, or million in case of adoptees. I think also one estimate would be 8 million adoptees in the US. So that would probably be, if we go pro rata, maybe 1 million in the UK, 1.5 million maybe. So Canada at the moment, maybe 12 million, 15 million worldwide. So lots of different definitions of fog. The way I see it is that when we come out of the fog, we're still not seeing ourselves clearly.
Not initially.
No.
For certain.
So it feels to me like you had a lighthouse, your faith was your lighthouse drawing you forward.
Okay. Yeah. I would agree with that.
And you could still see it. You could see that. I didn't have one, so I just had the devil's poker at my bum. So I reckon it goes something like this: fog, then mist, then brilliant sunshine, and in that brilliant sunshine, we see the world clearly, and we see who we are, and we see that we are the lighthouse. So everybody's looking to be enlightened, but they are actually the light.
Light.
They're looking outside themselves. So the only thing that happens is endarkenment, right? The lighthouse gets shrouded by fog or dark. We're the lighthouse, and we see ourselves. Yes. And when you said see the world clearly, and that was my kind of my my link to the lighthouse. See the world clearly. See the world clearly. We see who we are clearly. We see ourselves as the diamond. Then what happens? Sorry, no. So does that all?
That does resonate. I get it. I understand. I would agree with that.
Could you fine tune it at all? Could you fine tune it?
Oh, I don't know if I could
tweak the metaphor. Tweak the metaphor. Present us a different way, because this is just like I see it, and as you know, that's just my truth.
Well, as I guess since we've gone down the faith road, that light is God within me.
Love it. Yeah.
So for me, that's understanding and intersecting those two as well.
So as a non-religious person, I would say the consciousness that I am.
Sure.
But I'm using consciousness and God interchangeably. So I'm using consciousness for non-religious people and God for religious people. But I'm not seeing any actual difference between the two. And I hope that doesn't upset anybody or upset you. Sure.
Certainly not. Certainly not. Everybody's story is their own, and I'm by no way offended by any of what you're bringing forward at all.
So there's my little, when you say I'm aware of the little, the tics and why I do stuff like that. So one of the things I've got is I have this idea is that I'm not particularly attuned, right? So sometimes I think I've caused offense. I may have caused offense and I haven't, right? Like I just did then.
Right.
Sometimes I cause offense.
You don't know.
And I have no idea that I don't. And that's a little personality quirk of mine. To what extent I would say that's down to adoption, who knows? But it's a little quirk. It could be, but I'm sure that a shrink could make that connection very logically. But
probably.
But whether they're true, whether they're right or not, who knows? Who knows? What I think happens is, so we've gone out of we've been in the fog, we've been bumping into stuff, and we've had no idea of the cause of our accidents. So this isn't about being a bad driver. This is about being adopted and having some subconscious feelings of some subconscious anger, some subconscious trauma, some subconscious feeling of not being insecure enough, and we, because it was pre-verbal, we don't know it. So it's subconscious. Then it comes kicking and screaming out of the fog, and it's scary because we're out of the fog, but we still can't see who we are, and we're scared about what lies ahead of us. We're thinking that the mist is going to mean that we walk off the edge of the cliff, right?
Yeah, certainly.
Yeah, that's the scary bit. And comes back to your just one step forward and having the faith that I guess God's your parachute if you fall off the cliff. I don't know. Maybe I'm taking the metaphor too far. So then what happens? This is what happens to me is then. So I've seen myself clearly, and then the mist comes in again.
Yeah, as healing is not linear, neither for me is being out of the fog. There's no end point where you say, yep, I've done all the work, I'm here, I'm healed. And it's every day is bright and clear and sunshine.
Yeah.
That's not what it is at all.
No.
My relief comes in on the days that the mist is back, and some days it can still be quite thick. I know for a fact that I am not going to drown back in that complete fog.
So the fog's less scary. The fog or mist is less scary.
Yes, for me it is.
Yeah, I'd echo that. So why do you think we think there's an end point? Because you said there's no end point, and I thought spot on, Kirsten. But why do we think that? Well, why do I think that? Why do you think that? I mean, who knows why?
I think it's some of it's our Western culture of achievement and saying, I've done it. Look at me. I've reached that apex of, yep, all's well now. I've done the work. I've reached the end point, and I've made it. I don't think that's realistic any more than staying trapped by the trauma is realistic. There's no way that, at least for me, I intend to continue to grow throughout my life. And if I stop learning, stop working through what for me is always going to be a part of my story, if you stop growing, stop learning, then you're not living, whether you're alive or not.
I love that. And as you were talking, I summed up, an image popped into my head that summed it up, what you're talking about when you said Western culture. I thought of the end of the kids' storybook, and they all lived out happily ever after.
Right.
They all lived out. So it's once and done. And I also thought about, like, the way that we learn stuff is once and done, isn't it? That's the cultural thing. So
yeah,
we never forget how to ride a bike. We never forget that 2 + 2 is always 4. We're raised in that once and done. We're raised in once and done, not forgetting stuff. That kind of sums up really that Western culture thing. So what was that question I was going to ask you? It's gone. Yeah. And everybody trying to sell us a solution.
Yes.
Whether it's a book or a course, or I don't know, therapy, or a YouTube video. Everybody's telling us once and done. Finally you'll be free of this.
Yeah, no, I know I never will. But there's a difference between freedom from that and being able to identify what that monster in the fog might be.
Yeah, I thought you were going to say freedom with.
Well, that as well. Yeah. Freedom with, sure.
Freedom with.
Maybe that's where I was trying to go and I couldn't get it.
Yeah.
It's both and. It's not either or.
And then again, we're back to Western culture.
Yes.
It doesn't like that. It's
limiting. Yeah, to me, the structures that we've been raised in and grown to celebrate and have value, that doesn't work. It's not linear to live. Living is not linear.
So you're talking about beliefs here, I think, are you? Talking about beliefs?
In what way?
Well, you used the word, I think you used the word limiting, and I think you did, and I went straight to limiting beliefs, but I could have just made that up in my head, because
Well, they're in terms of self-limiting, or I mean, societally, we have limiting beliefs that are
okay. So let's go to self then.
okay.
So we made a distinction between identity and personality earlier on, didn't we?
Mm-hmm.
So is personality to you self, or personality to you identity, or am I trying to narrow you down, railroad you with something a bit more complex than that? How do you see those three things: self, identity, and personality? How do you see those kind of things?
Self, for me, I'm going to use the word true self. That's
Okay.
that diamond.
Okay. It is identity.
I think that's a piece of it. I think identity, I go to identify a little bit. What things identify you. I think those are sometimes even still labels, though. Personality to me, personality is more the way you act, interact, present in the world. And those things, as we talked about early on, personality sometimes covers up that diamond, that true self that's in there. It can mask it. It can shroud it.
So I want to go back to story.
Okay.
Because I think that's another part of, for me, one of the first, before I uncoupled from my trauma, I uncoupled from my story. And I see a lot of adoptees being encouraged to share their story before they've seen the truth of who they are.
Sure.
So that kind of reinforces, if somebody had come to me and said, share your story 14 years ago, I would have been sharing fiction. I wouldn't have been sharing the truth of who I am. And as I retell my story, I reinforce something that was untrue, as in my birth mother didn't love me enough to keep me. Essentially,
sure.
That was yeah, right. So if I'd gone around telling that story, but if somebody said, "Oh, you've got to share your story, Simon," and I was still, and I kept on saying my birth mother didn't love me enough to keep me, but then I would be reinforcing. I would be reinforcing that. So I would be adding steel to the concrete to make it reinforced. And
you would be perpetuating.
That's a better way of putting it. Well, another way of putting it. But I would have been perpetuating it. And the more I perpetuated it, the more I would be stuck in it. So the further down, the thicker the mist would become.
I would agree with that. I think, I'm not sure I could have told my story 10 years ago, or as I began to identify that I was coming out of this fog, or that I even knew adoption was a thing. Beginning to tell that story then would be vastly different from the experience I would tell you about sitting here today. Those are two very, I think,
Two different things.
my lens is different.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm fortunate enough to have a relationship with my birth mom, my first mom, and have heard the words of reassurance that it was not, the stereotypical story we were told of she loved you so much she gave you away. I have the antithesis to that in a person, if that makes sense. I have, not simply because I have her to tell me a different story. That's a piece of it. Some of what she and I have been able to share, and it's another chapter in my story. What she and I have been able to share in conversation has helped me get a better understanding of who lies deep within that diamond, that inner true self. I don't tell the story of she didn't love me, so she gave me away, or that she did love me, therefore gave me away. It has that piece has less power because I know it's not true. I had a good friend.
Okay.
Once,
so that's the key thing. Sorry, I interrupted you.
That became kind of a mantra for me when you get in that self-talk of, the self-deprecating and harmful discussions we have with ourselves. The pause for me is that really true? That's become a key phrase for me, is that really true?
Have you done the stuff with Byron Katie, that stuff?
I've done some Byron Katie, yes.
So if
you're hearing that in what I'm sharing.
Yeah. If you're listening and you want a process, it doesn't grab me, but other people find it really useful. It's Byron Katie stuff.
Yeah.
Maybe I've not attempted it quite right. It felt a little bit mechanical to me.
It can be, yeah.
But
but I think exposing ourselves to multiple resources is also helpful, because
she's got millions, tens of millions of followers and people doing it. But I did actually Google once to see, because she has all these videos on YouTube, doesn't she, of people for actually doing stuff. And I tried to find one, but I don't think I could. I don't think I could find one that was anything to really do with maybe I find one with an adoptive mom, I think. Anyway, I couldn't find an adoptee one that.
Right.
Maybe I should have looked. Maybe I should have looked again. To what extent do you think the people, the experts, the Gabor Mates of this world and other people, keep us stuck by focusing on the trauma and not that?
Well, I think there's value in their work, certainly, because it has brought things to the forefront, made them relevant for vastly larger numbers of people. It's brought discussion that would not have happened. Yeah. So I think there's great value in that portion of the work. As you and I discussed, though, I think there's, again, maybe pause in that remaining stuck in that trauma as identity is damaging and limiting for individuals, and then individuals collectively become a community.
So the way I see two key parts of the adoption industry and most adoptees. I would say that we're trauma obsessed. And I believe that we should be trauma informed, because Gabor Mate and these guys, they really know their onions.
Yeah.
So we can learn from them, and we can become trauma informed. But we should
love
be trauma
that
informed
comparison. I love that.
And healing obsessed. And for me, they seem to go down a route where they think, it's almost as if their public stuff, and I'm counting Bruce Perry in amongst this, I bought the Oprah Winfrey book, Oprah, and have you read that? Oprah, What Happened to You? Oprah Winfrey and Bruce Perry, the trauma guy.
I've not read it.
Yeah. Well, you're way past it, so you don't need to. I listened to it for 8 hours. I kept on thinking, he's going to get to the healing bit, but it didn't. It was just trauma informed, trauma education. And every now and then you go, yeah, but of course there's neuroplasticity. All right, well, how do I harness neuroplasticity? What's neuroplasticity? It sounds like, I mean, that's not a layperson tune. Epiphany. Right. Epiphany. That, you use the word epiphany. So epiphanies, new ideas, eye-opening insights, a change of heart. That's what changes our world. And neuroplasticity, I can't even say it properly. Neuroplasticity is the collective term for all of those things, but you don't need to, you can have healing insights listening to a fellow adoptee, or overhearing a conversation at the supermarket. These people, for me, most of their stuff is like how people sell. So I've done a lot of marketing learning in my time. Basically, what you start with is a positive headline, and then you dump a load of fear in your audience, and then you tell them that you've got the solution. And that's how everybody sells everything, from business coaching to weight loss to, I don't know, learning to drive. Not learning to drive, that's a bad example. But that's how everybody seems to sell stuff. And it's like, well, the Bruce Perry and Oprah Winfrey book seemed to me to be basically an advert for his. It's a reason that you need his therapy, because he's just going to dump the explanation of it down on you, and he did for me for 8 hours for my £7 a month Audible subscription, and then I'm going to have to go to him and buy his course to get out
to get the next piece,
to get the healing piece. So
yep.
I'm gonna traumatize you and re-traumatize you, but you're gonna have to pay me more than £7 if you're gonna get access to my healing stuff.
I love the trauma informed versus trauma obsessed. I think that can be used for individuals as well, not just culturally,
yes,
societally, but people who can't move forward are, in my estimation, perhaps trauma obsessed, instead of being informed and then looking at it from okay, now what, then what?
And I'm saying that the specialists are actually reinforcing that. Mm-hmm. In my opinion.
Sure.
Do you know what I mean? But
yeah.
Gabor Mate knows a lot a lot more about me. I interviewed, let's not go down there. So I'm conscious of time. It's been a whirlwind of 50 odd minutes or so that we've been chatting. As always, listeners, I encourage you to check out the show notes. So there's a list, there's a link to Kirsten's book in there, link to the stuff that she's doing. So check that out. But what's the question I've not asked, or the thoughts that you'd like to share as we bring this in?
Wow. For me, being part of the adoptee community, I take that as having a sense of responsibility to help others grow and move forward by sharing the story, but not being bound by what had been. I think it's important. Adoptees speak a common language. There's nothing like a room full, whether in person or virtually, there's nothing like a room full of adoptees to bring about the head nods and the understanding and the unspoken common feeling of what we share as adoptees. But I also feel that it's our duty, once we know better, to do better. And so that's kind of my purpose, my intent for joining you and for sharing what I've shared elsewhere. Brilliant. In the world.
Love it. And if you're wondering how you can know better, listeners, you've been doing it for the last 50 minutes. Or hopefully that sounds a bit big-headed, does it? So you've got some different perspectives. Let's just put it this way. Let's not be too self-deprecating. Is there a question that you'd like to ask me, Kirsten?
What do you see your role as in the adoptee community, in the adoptee space? What do you feel your role is in that? I appreciate what you're doing. Let me say that first and foremost.
Thank you. I'm trying to mine the epiphanies of other adoptees, and so that all adoptees can see themselves as that diamond.
Oh, thank you for that work.
Thank you. You're welcome. I love it. And what would you like, last question, what would you like to call this episode?
You're really racking my brain here.
What about Unstuck?
Sure. Unstuck is good. I'm looking out the window behind my computer here into this incredibly dense, thick fog, which is somewhat interesting to be having this discussion and seeing fog literally just outside my window. I like Unstuck. Cool.
Jolly good. Thank you very much, Kirsten. Thank you, listeners. Thank you for staying with us. And we will speak to you again very soon. Thanks a lot. Bye-bye.